Hi everybody, so Valom's C-46 Commando, the hump. Now Valom kits are not for the faint-hearted, but I buy a Valom kit for the simple reason, the subjects and the variety. Something mainstream companies don't touch. Although saying that, William Brothers released the C-46. I remember building it back in the 80s. Came with rubber tyres, if I remember rightly. Now that would have been my first choice, the William Brothers C-46. I would have sourced that if possible. But when I was looking at the Valom kit in the box to the plastic bags, I was quite impressed. Surface detail looked really nice. Looks can be deceiving. So I ended up buying the Valom kit. Lots of sanding, lots of dry fitting, lots of filler, and lots of swearing. Any road up. Let's get on and see what I did with this kit. And I do hope you like the end results.
So let's take a look at the hump. Now, first impressions looking through the plastic bags, looking very good, which is why I bought the kit instead of trying to source the old William Brothers kit. Decals in with the etch fret. These are looking very nice. The clear parts, looking very nice as well. So let's take a closer look at the main parts. So not bad, first impressions. Lots of cleanup, which is only to be expected from these type of production kits. We get some resin engines as well. I've seen better, but I have seen worse. A colour chart, cross-referencing different paints, that's always a nice touch. 2 schemes are on offer. So there's going to be a lot of test fitting with this build, which is only to be expected. A lot more than usual. So I'm going to start with the undercarriage doors. No reason why. I think this is going to be a lot of faff trying to clean up these tab marks off with success. So I'm going to go down another avenue, taking all the detail off from around the sides. I'm also just going to give some definition to these holes. In fact, I think these are plated. I covered up. Next, I've added some plastic card to recreate the door lip. So the card has been trimmed off around the edge. Just need to finish off the other 3 doors. So the undercarriage legs are next, and this is where most modelers, me included, would consider replacing them with aftermarket offerings. But I think with a bit of effort, with a file, they'll come out okay. Talking of aftermarket stuff, while I was looking around and considering replacing the legs, I found these upgrades for the C-46. Now some, if not all of these are meant for the Williams Brothers kit, but I thought I might be able to use and cannibalise some of these upgrades. We shall see. Now this set I bought mainly for the printed console. I hope it fits. So the cockpit is next, and I've cut and cleaned all the parts. Now I'm hoping to tart up these seats with this set. It will mean some fudging, as this set is meant for the other C-46 kit. Same for the console. So I'll be using as much as I can from both frets. The cockpit floor, I've cut the 2 seat platforms off, covered the holes up, ready for the etched parts. I've cut out some of the fret parts I think I can use. So it is going to be trial and error with these etched parts, whether they're going to fit and whether they're going to be any use. The printed console parts will be added after I've painted the cockpit. Now the etched parts on the seat were another story. I had to cut the 2 braces at the back here for the part to fit, and I use that term loosely. The yokes are done, and I'm ready to add the new seats to the platforms. This fits on the inside wall. Next I need to add the console assembly to the floor, but as the instructions seem a bit vague on the positioning, I'll need to do some dry fitting first. I've taped up the fuselage parts and will drop this in, and hopefully I'll get an idea of the position of the console. You can tell by this poor shot that the console is sitting far too high. Some more fudging is required. So I interpreted the instructions as placing the panel here, but maybe placing it here might be a better answer, especially looking at the illustrations in the later stages of the build. So after a lot of faff and dry fitting, I've ended up with a small piece of plastic just to raise the panel on the lower ledge here. So before I can start adding paint, there are a couple of things that need to be done. The first is to make the panel lines a little bit more defined. They're just a little soft here and there. So a couple of passes should do. So I'm hoping you can see the difference. The one on the right has been rescribed, and the one on the left is how the panel lines looked originally. Then next are the cabin windows. I'm giving them a coat of Johnson's Clear first. This is just to protect them from the filler that I'll use later. And because I want these parts to protrude out slightly, I need to take a fair amount of plastic off from the inside. These fuselage halves are quite thick. Now I could use a power tool here, far more speedier, but I feel I've got more control doing it the hydraulic way. A bit more plastic to remove. The windows are a nice tight fit, and I hope you can see them sticking out slightly. Just need to glue them in. So with the glue set, I've added filler around the windows just in case there are any fine gaps. Now just to sand all this flush. I've covered this process in a few video builds already, so I'm not going over old ground. But these are the polishing pads I'll use on this process. I forgot all about the back here, and there's a lot going on, a lot of parts to glue and fit. The parts are all cleaned, let's get on. The two frames are added first, and I'm just checking to make sure there's no clash with the fuselage halves. A bit of care is needed here, as the parts may look different from what's being illustrated. Now hindsight's a wonderful thing, and if you build this kit, I'd build the rear leg assembly first to the frame, and then glue the frame to the fuselage. It's going to be far easier. Now after looking at photographs of the rear gear to find a position, I thought the kit part looked a bit too long. So I've decided to cut about this much off. So while that is drying, I'll make a start on the main undercarriage bays. One issue here is that these four parts, two either side of the wings, these are numbered on the build stage, but the numbers are missing off the plan. So some dry fitting of these parts is needed to see where this part fits best. With the glue set, I need to sand the top here flush so the upper wing seats better. So after scraping off an unfeasibly amount of plastic on the leading edge here, I've managed to get the rear to look a bit more to scale. So I'm going to start by gluing the wing in stages, letting that dry before moving on around. I could have spent some time trying to clean up the inner bay here, but I decided in the end just to cut some plastic out to shape and cover up this area. So the cowls are glued, but the two intakes needed a bit more definition on the front cowl here. So while all that is drying, I'm going to make a start on those resin props. Now these blades are very thin. We've got the spinner and the hub. I'll cut this shaft from here and drill a hole. Same diameter hole in the block. Some brass rod is glued onto the spinner hub. Just need to glue the blades. The next thing I need to do is just to check that the prop and block will look right when the cowl's on. So I'll tape the block onto the conical part here and then place the cowl over that. Looks okay, give or take a few thous of a millimetre. Now the Valom kit supplies photo etch cowl flaps, but I found that these etched parts needed some trimming to fit properly. Next is trying to sort out how that main landing gear goes together. So all these parts on the instruction are just shown already assembled in one illustration, showing you really nothing. So I've decided to add some strength to this undercarriage part. So you can see where the top of the rod will rest on the top of the wing. So off camera I needed to do a lot of dry fitting to see what works before adding glue. So this is what I've ended up with. Wheels next, and here we have the kits offering. Thankfully I have the resin replacements. So at long last I'm going to start by adding paint. Black first. With that I'll add some base colours. An interior green has been added to most areas, and then I'll dry brush a yellow for the highlights. Once all the paint has dried, I'll tighten up all the detail with a Tamiya panel wash. Now before I close up the fuselage parts, I thought it might be a good idea to glue the two-part canopy to each side of the fuselage. Once again, a bit of dry fitting here before glue is added. Always the case, one side seemed to fit better than the other. I've decided only to glue the front first, let that dry before gluing the rest. So a lot of work here to get rid of these seams. So I've got an issue with the top rear canopy fit, only slight, but it will stand out a mile. So I'm deciding whether to sand the whole canopy rather than faff about trying to correct that one small area. Now I'm toying with that idea because it would be a shame to destroy all that nice framework. So I've done a rubbing of the framework just in case I go down that road. So seconds to you, but time has passed, and as you can see I decided to sand the whole canopy. You can see the top black wedge, the gap that sent me down this way. So from the pencil rubbings I've created some artwork for the masks to be cut out later. The wings next, and before I can add them I need to add these two pieces first. Now this piece wasn't a bad fit. Once again I glued the front first, let that dry before gluing the rear. So sanding finish, and as you can see there's going to be a lot of rescribing to do on the fuselage, and I'm better doing that while the wings are still off. I've just run a bead of Tamiya extra thin along those panel lines. Let's see how good these wings are going to fit. Top looks good. Quite a big gap underneath to fill. Let's see the other side. The left wing is a better fit. This spar piece is dry fitted in, and once I'm happy with the position I'll glue it into place. So this part is left to dry before adding the wings. Make sure, if you use this method, that the other wing is glued into place so you can check the dihedral before the glue sets. It's better to get the dihedral right and fill in any gaps at the wing root later. The two engine cowls can be fitted, and here I've had to make sure all the angles of dangles are right, well near enough, so long as they both look symmetrical. So the surface of the C-46 has been thoroughly cleaned, especially those panel lines, and the masks have been applied. My first coat is going to be a light green. This coat will show any imperfections in the sanding, and of course with that coat loads of discrepancies showed themselves. The green I used is just a mixture of yellow with a hint of black. The grey is applied next. Then next is a green, or aircraft green US as they call it. I've gone for an olive drab, mixed with a small amount of Tamiya khaki. Then the tedious boots. I mean tedious because of all the masking. So everything is demasked, and I've picked out some panel lines using the colours applied thinned down by brush. So next, using a very warm piece of sanding sponge, I've lightly sanded the surface. The sanding sponge must always be wet, and always sand in the direction of flight. So this first pass is just taking off any loose paint particles on the surface. Then the surface is cleaned with a damp cloth, and that includes removing the crap collected in the panel lines. Nice, beautiful and smooth. I'll get on and do the rest of the kit. So next I'm going to go a bit deeper with the sanding, but this time I'm just picking out certain areas and edges. Now I think I go into more detail on this technique on the 1/24 scale Hurricane build. I think. So hopefully I've broken up the overall flat olive drab by letting that lighter colour underneath come through. Now before I can add the decals, I need to clean with water the surface and those panel lines again. So the decals, as mentioned in the beginning, look very good, but we all know looks can be deceiving. So I've applied the decals and I've had a couple of issues. One is the registration issue, which you can see here, and the other one, the decals seemed a little brittle, Maybe a coat of the microscale liquid decal film would have solved the latter. Oh, one other detail is that the decal is a left alignment, but on the layout it has it looking right. I don't know. With the decals dried, I've now applied a flurry wash. And with the issues I had with the decals, I've decided to use my usual way of adding walkways. Looking at many black and white photographs of the C-46 in service, it was hard to find them with walkways. A lot of civvy jobs and museum pieces, yes. So the mask strips have been painted by stippling an off-black Tamiya mix. The next issue is, are these going to fit? So I've laid it out to follow these raised details here. I think they're refueling points. It would make sense that they were positioned here looking at the shape of this walkway. So from there I've worked my way along. So a few millimeters is needed trimming off each length to get these to fit. So I've just got to try and match up the other side. So I can start to add the last parts to the C-46. The dome, the wheels and the props. Once again, a lack of any convincing information of the position of the observer's dome. The instructions show it central, but in some photographs it looks slightly off centre. Same with the massive aerials on the front. Many variations are shown. The loop antennas are added. These are shown in black, but I have seen them painted in the upper and lower colours. Valom does supply the rest of the aerials, but even if I add these, I can guarantee I'll knock them off at some stage. Too faffy for me, but you can knock yourself out on your build. The undercarriage, then the wheels. Now before the PVA glue sets, I'm going to make sure that the flat spots on the resin wheels seat properly. So this kit is a lot of work. No shocker really there, is there? Also, no coat of varnish has been added on this build. The paints and decals have been left raw to the elements. The reason for that is that a varnish, whether it's matte, satin or gloss, would kill that surface patina. Only something you can appreciate in the flesh. The photographs aren't going to show it. As far as the upgrades go, the props and the wheels are usable, a good buy, but the cockpit upgrade I personally wouldn't bother for the Valom kit. It's not meant for this kit, but I thought I'd see if I could use it. But looking back, it wasn't worth all the effort involved with the Valom kit, which is a shame. It's a wonderful set and would look nice on the Williams Brothers kit. So I want to thank you for watching. And I do hope to see you for the next build, whenever that is. See you later.